Since that afternoon, the leader did not review the army or give speeches, and soon was forgotten. The genie took over power, a genie who was not human, but a military genius. The entire population witnessed his prodigious appearance. He emerged from a battle that the leader always carried with him, wielding it like a scepter. No one believed that the bottle represented anything more than a symbolic or alcoholic detail, because the country's attention was focused on the terrorist, guilty of the worst villainies. Once he posed as a sculpture, surprising the public with his work, a pedestal that held the sky up. And the surprise was even greater when he removed the pedestal. Everybody contemplated the night without understanding by what artifice the stars remained defying gravity. The terrorist raised his eyes, and when everyone thought they saw an omen, he just burst into tears. Even forgetting the terrorist, many difficulties overwhelmed the leader. He had no faithful subject, neither his wife nor his dog. Terrified, he held the battle day and night. An unusual circumstance kept him in power. The last river dried out because the alchemist transmuted the water into gold. Sentenced to torture, he confessed a formula that he really didn't know, a coincidence in a haystack. 800 times dew was distilled following his instructions to the letter and obtained whiskey. People drank until drunk, and the alchemist repeated the formula to refill the stirrup cups, but this time added a word that he could never remember. The water turned into gold, the rain water. At dawn, the landscape was golden. The genie, meanwhile, was training his army on a battlefield where battles were never fought. Soldiers fed up with simulations, with no real exploits, despite their many years of service. He had to lift the soldiers' morale using ideas inspired by any puddle. Shot the first enemy you don't see. Skin a tree. Play dead. When they finished, he would shout, "Wake up, it is all a dream." But it was impossible to keep such large battalions asleep. He needed vigil tactics to entertain himself, such as not blinking or moving a muscle, nightmarish exercises, probably the last battle for many worn out under his maniac orders. Each birthday, the leader sent him armored cars loaded with pork liver, showing dedication so flattering that would seem ridiculous to anyone who did not experience the genie's demagogic superiority. It was close the afternoon when the genie would show his ruthless power, but not that night, because he would attend the most important wedding in town. Drago, a dragon banker, was marrying the last descendant of Mr. Temple, a distinguished news editor. "Mr. Temple, I don't believe a word you say." "I believe them all." "Mr. Temple, I will fight that dragon tonight with a glass in my right hand and the 10 of wands in my left, because he is the terrorist." "Anyone can be the terrorist," thought the genie, decided to spy on Drago's wedding. The groom was the heir to a large fortune he would receive the day of his wedding, which he was finally celebrating with the only descendant of Mr. Temple. He opposed it. Pushing aside the guests, Mr. Temple burst into the ceremony wearing medieval armor, the sword of St. George at his belt, and the Templar shield with the cross piercing a dragon. Seeing him, Drago snorted flames of indignation, burning the genie's cassock, disguised as a priest. "Charge!" shouted Mr. Temple, raising an imaginary but sharp lance that stabbed the public opinion, and Drago, since then the most powerful banker, erased the figure of the genie on the coins. He was up against the wall. While the genie wasted his time like this, the leader confiscated every drop and sold out all future rains, amassing mountains of gold behind the genie's back, tricking him with a comedy. Leader, scrying a crystal ball. Silence! At this hour the spirits communicate. Turns on the sphere, which is actually a TV set. Changes the channels disgusted with the programs. Enough! Destroys the TV with hammer blows, causing an explosion. Vader Retro! An attack! A subversive act! A stooped janitor enters to sweep the stage. An exact replica of the leader's house. He is not a politician, but would surely act better than him if given the option. Every night he thinks about appearing on a stage, but the show ends and his weak muscles don't respond, nor his voice manages to come out. Again he nervously tries in vain. The curtain has fallen. Sweeping away the applause of others keeps the hope of overcoming his fear the following week. He rehearses his best routine sweeping in front of the mirror, inspired by any tragedy in the newspaper, and again faces his moment. Now, yes, but neither. In this way a long life passed under his own silence. One night he found a coin, flipped it in his hand, while dreaming of bursting into the culminating moment of the play. Heads or tails, heads or tails. The coin fell to the floor, rolled towards a crack, and by chance that is destiny, triggered a concealed sliding door, revealing the leader's incalculable treasure. The rumor spread, feeding unrest. The leader denied any wrongdoing, arguing that it happened in the theater, not in his house. Just another trick by the terrorist. And while Congress was arguing whether the use of the letter Z is frequent in Russian language, he hid the treasure in a jealously guarded pigsty. The janitor could have changed the course of history by revealing where the gold was hidden, even if it was an accidental finding. In this world divided between human beings and human beings, some, overwhelmed by the cruel treatment of others, start revolutions doomed to failure. Any circumstance can pull the trigger, but this one only meant misfortune for the poor janitor who got fired. Rags appear on the street at dawn. How can I feel myself an outsider if I'm here? I sleep on the floor like hundreds, waiting for a bus that doesn't arrive. An electoral nightmare, a food forgotten by itself, or not. Agony of the unemployed, always leaving. I vote for that one. Too much tiredness. The bus drivers shout the confusing destinations of their trips like slogans. And again, that's my candidate. The body doesn't care about the hardness of the ground or the fields, or the driver's slogans, or the candidate. I sleep. It is 7 o'clock. I know because a policeman wakes me up with a kick. I look for the bus that disappears when I have it on my eyelids. It rained. Actually, it drizzled water. The gold was gone. Hands rose to the sky, some to quench the thirst accumulated for so many months, others desperate because the rain was no longer golden. Just persistent water on the crowd, ending a spell that had kept them dazzled. To make matters worse, the mailman came with a message for the leader. Poker. Locke favored a distant enemy country, concluding a very long correspondence game. He had to pay, but the genie muddled the economy with his suspicions. Drago did not lend him a penny. Determined not to use his treasure to pay for gaming debts, the corrupt leader plotted dramatically tragic measures to secure his iron fist reign on the country. Leader, the city has been a blessing and a curse at the same time. Imagine the capital of an oil-producing country where gasoline is very cheap. Genie, a polluted Philistine city. Leader, suppose a group of motorcyclists block the scandalous traffic at 2 p.m. in complicity with the MP, Metropolitan Police. Genie, worse than Babylon, a riot. Get ready. Aim. That's what's happened. And thousands died. The sun was finishing its procession of stories. Bonny eyes peered stealthily through the windows as the mob chased the butcher's cart. In merry parade, a dog wrote an artwork. The curious animatedly touched his fur when he urinated on a post and disappeared into the multitude. At the end of the crowd, the clown laughed to the tears. Over the laughter of that clown aroused diverse and conflicting versions until the city was divided by two irreconcilable factions, organizing boxing and literary happy hours where people would read books while wearing boxing gloves as part of the clown's performance. The disagreement dissolved families. Armed clashes broke out between gangs of cops and judges in every corner. A beer marching band, happily playing exotic instruments, took the lead in the midst of chaos, followed by thousands of violent protesters, and the clown, without stopping, laughed in last place. The cathedral clock rang at 5 minutes to 6 because one of the violent factions contending in the streets, the so-called important, commanded it, while in the opposite group, the honey eaters, to slaughter chickens turned into their favorite guerrilla tactic. Pierced by nails, the fakir fell among the beheaded chickens during an attack by the honey eaters. His head made a not sound against the floor, rolled a few meters, and landed at the feet of the sad dwarf when the clock struck 6 and the clown passed with his white beard, laughing over the ruins. And the imaginary war the genie longed for became the ideal of a devastated country where the inhabitants barely ate a meager lunch that was saved for times of peace. At noon, the virgins of the city descended to the battlefield with the color of a walnut and a cherry for each combatant, in solidarity with their arduous vigilance, while the leader planned the worldwide scope of the riots he generated. The Third World Hospital was filled up beyond capacity with injured people. A woman screamed, imploring urgent health care for her beloved weapon, telling the doctor that its illness was electronic, that next time she wouldn't forget to change the batteries. The doctor walked her out of the operating room while explaining that their business was with humans. How could they repair a weapon? It happened hundreds of times. Many believed their weapons were human, a disease like stress or boredom. When the war begins, we will live in peace, was the official slogan, and the soldiers, the whole starved population, waited impatiently the moment to surrender, supposing any enemy less cruel than their misery. No one knew that the leader had hidden the treasure gold inside a pigsty in the deepest part of the forest, but the genie ingeniously discovered it. The military genie got furious like a mad dog, his blue skin contrasting with all that hidden gold. His angry reaction attracted the guards' attention, which would otherwise never approach that forbidden place, and, oh wonder, thousands of pigs were everywhere. In a country with so much hunger, the soldiers didn't care about the gold, but the pigs. Their incredulous cries joined those of the genie, and upon hearing them on the battlefield, a human stampede broke out towards the forest. That night the capital was darkened by the usual daily outage, but lively, because everyone interpreted the stampede as the start of the battle, and the revelry flooded homes and streets. The corrupt leader confronted the crowd at Victory Square, confused, without composing himself, surprised by enemies he knew inexistent. Women ran to the battlefield with white flags, dragging their children by the ears while yelling, "It is time to surrender!" But the battlefield was calm, perhaps more than ever. At last the morning of that afternoon arrived. Upon learning of the events, the leader stepped forward and delivered a passionate speech at Victory Square, his voice echoing through the crowd as he stood on the balcony. Mothers, rebellious children, I'm sorry to tell you that the war has not yet begun, and you must wait to surrender. Some people say they found pigs in the forest, but I swear it is fake news. Instantly, Victory Square was emptied. From the forest came the merrymaking with a smell of pork rinds and sausages. Meanwhile, the leader was plotting a mending discourse. After his lies were unveiled, no one would believe in his charisma. He uncorked a bottle of rum, and the genie came out with evaporation, fuming like a bad cop. He was the only one to notice the treasure. "You are the terrorist!" the genie roared, unleashing his merciless power across the land. "Leader, forgive me, I had no choice. Genie, as punishment, I will turn you into a pig." Poof! And abandon the leader in the forest.